get into a great flow state working on something, but distractions always seem to find me. How do I deal with unavoidable interruptions?
So, Amishi, unavoidable interruptions. We're talking about distractions today. Unavoidable interruptions. Now, most interruptions are avoidable. I think we can start there. We are interrupting ourselves all the time. We set ourselves up in environments that interrupt us constantly. The pings, the notifications, the emails, the social media streams, the Facebook posts, the TikTok. All of a sudden, we're interrupted all day. We've signed up for many of our interruptions. But even if we get rid of those, we turn off the notifications, we check the inbox once a day, we remove email from our phone, we remove social media from our phone, there will always be unwelcomed interruptions in our lives as long as we are, living in a society with other people.
Yeah.
Can we talk about those?
Yeah, but even if we did that, even if we moved away from a society with other people, and we set ourselves up to do something. Let's say I'm going to go on a retreat in the forest, and I'm going to write this paper or manuscript or poem, whatever it is. And so there are no external interruptions that should be pulling me away. I guarantee there's going to be interruptions that are unwelcome that still occur because your mind is still with you. And there's this great story about these medieval monks that literally were monastics that dedicated their lives to God, hundreds of years ago. And they were getting so irritated because they'd be praying and all of a sudden they'd have a thought about lunch or they'd have some sexual fantasy that would arise. Like they were constantly getting distracted and they would get so angry with themselves because the mind just would not stop pumping out thoughts. And so the first thing I want to say to everybody that has distractions that are maybe unavoidable and external or an internal cluttering that can arise is that's normal. It happens. What you do next is what it may be more in your control. So the first step is to notice that it's occurred. I am distracted right now. My mind is not where I want it to be. The flashlight, I want pointing here, but it's over here. That is huge. That's a huge win to say, my mind is not where I want it to be. But then that gives you permission and instruction to do something else, which is, now that I know I'm not where I want it to be, bring it back. So it's focus, notice, redirect. And that, by the way, is the exact same set of components that are part of a foundational mindfulness practice. And that we can do over and over again. And then the distractions have less power over us. Because the reason I think people get so panicked about distractions, just like those medieval monks did, is they think that they're going to be compelled to interact with them in that hyper-proliferating manner that clutters the entire whiteboard. And then you're toast. And it's like, I can't even think anymore. All I see is like 1,000 thoughts, right? So instead, if you really hone in on this capacity to notice what's going on, you have other choices that you could make. Either continue in that proliferation or just simply return that flashlight back to where you want to focus.
So
begin again.
What were the three things again? Notice,
focus,
and
notice, redirect.
Okay.
So you were describing, Ryan, at the outset that you did the find your flashlight practice. You were doing the breathing exercise.
Yeah.
Last night to fall asleep. I think one of the reasons, so can I just describe what that is? So that people
absolutely.
know?
Please do.
So that breathing practice, again, I call it the find your flashlight practice, is essentially take a few moments, sit in a quiet place, upright, not uptight, kind of, you're taking this seriously. Notice that your body's breathing, just broadly. And then notice something vivid about the fact that you are breathing. Vivid, really vivid in your sensory experience, like the coolness of air moving in and out of your nostrils, or your chest moving up and down, whatever it is for you. That's the target for your attention. That's the anchor for your attention. And then for the few minutes of the practice, you're going to take your flashlight of attention and point it on those breath-related sensations. For me, it tends to be the air in the nostril. So I keep my flashlight there, focusing it there. That's the intention. Second step, notice when your mind has wandered away from that focus. So and that is, by the way, that's where you're using the floodlight, that metaphor of that broad receptive stance. So you're constantly kind of watching. Where is my mind right now? I didn't say if you're one of those weirdos whose mind wanders. Everybody's mind will wander. 50% of our waking moments, the mind will wander. So you're focused on that breath-related sensation. You notice that the mind has wandered. So focus, notice. Third step, redirect.
Redirect it.
And so this can be very helpful in every single thing we do. The power of distractions will be dialed down. The power of being overtaken by our own thoughts will be dialed down. And for you last night, I think it probably helped you fall asleep because that whole proliferation of mental content quiets. It actually is a way we can quiet because there's only one thing I'm focused on. Breath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because what happens, as I'm laying down, going to sleep, like I'm unpacking the day.
Yeah.
So I'm like reliving the day. And then I will start thinking about the next day, and all these stories start to develop. And what's nice about this practice is, it puts you in the present moment and kind of cuts those stories out. And when I have less chatter in my mind, it's easier for me to fall asleep. So what I hear you saying is like, it's not about, to answer Melinda's question, it's not about avoiding these distractions. It's about how do you handle these distractions when they come up? Because they will inevitably come up. I think
avoiding is like a tricky thing. I would say definitely advantage yourself to try to monotask versus putting yourself in a context where you feel you're going to have to do multiple things.
Mm-hmm.
So try to minimize that, just like you were starting out by saying. We can control some of that. Realize that even if you perfectly do that, there are going to be interruptions, just emergent things that come up.
Mm-hmm.
You might get a phone call because you need to take it.
Mm-hmm.
But more than that, notice that the mind's internal distractibility will continue. And there's nothing to really worry about it. Just notice that it's happening, and don't sort of take the bait, if you will. Noticing means you've got control. Like, do I want to keep having the thought about tomorrow morning? Do I really need to think more about the plans for tomorrow? Ask yourself that, right? And then if you decide in that moment, I still do really want to sort that out, fine. But if you say, you know what, I'm trying to fall asleep right now. I didn't need to plan tomorrow's entire day. Get back.
Yeah.
So that just gives you so many more choice points. And you're not so compelled by the distraction. And definitely your chances of becoming overwhelmed by the distraction may be dialed down.
Yeah. Can you just speak a little bit so you have a practice, some practices in your book. And like these have been tested on athletes, they've been tested on Marines. What, like if someone reads your book and they put these practices into life, what's the hard data that says like it actually helps? This is how you get, the peak mind.
Yeah. And that's kind of why I wanted to write the book in the first place, is because we kept seeing over and over again a couple of patterns. The first is that attention is extremely powerful. Like the way people pay attention and their ability to do so impacts their performance and their well-being. So they feel better, they're more capable, they're more successful at what they're trying to achieve, they're more fulfilled by what they want to achieve. Very important. So we knew that was attention is going to be important. But the second piece, which was really the eye-opening piece, is it's extremely vulnerable. So under high stress, and it may not be, something is going to happen. You may be landing in the middle of it. A family member gets sick, or there's a challenge with something having to do with your house. You never know, right? It's not maybe preparing for deployment to war, but there are going to be periods of time where stress will occur. It'll be protracted, and your attention declines. That is consequential. So attention's powerful, vulnerable. So then the solution was like, let's just train for it. Let's train every day in the same way we train for our physical wellness, because we never know when the next high stress interval may occur. So the data itself was us tracking with objective measures, and even in the larger field of my field now, contemplative neuroscience, we're going to track with brain imaging. We can track people's brain function to see what happens. Is attention actually objectively less effective under high stress? Yes. Now let's give mindfulness training in that interval. The suite of practices in this book are essentially from the wisdom traditions. I may have modified them for a modern twist to give imagery and examples that make it more accessible, but these have been around at the core for thousands of years. And they're not mine alone. They're really part of the world's wisdom. But doing them with regularity, about 12 minutes a day, for 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, around 4 weeks is a good ramp up, produced protection against decline in attention, protection against decline in mood, and a reduction in stress levels. So that was the objective stuff. And then we can look at like brass tacks performance. How do people actually perform? And, a study we just came out with recently was in military service members, and they got this mindfulness program over 4 weeks, mindfulness-based attention training. We wanted it to sound tough, so it was MBAT was the acronym. And we gave it to them in the pre-deployment interval. And yes, unfortunately, things got bad and their attention started declining. They took the program and were able to stay stable over time. A collaborating group of Army researchers took that same program and offered it to people and found that pass rates on something called the stress shoot, which is essentially they stress them out, they do physical activity, and then they have to hit their mark on marksmanship. They were better at doing that. And this is very important. It's not just that they were better at shooting. It's they were better at shooting when they were supposed to and withholding when they were supposed to. So think about what that could mean for any other people where their actions or inaction are consequential. So that's the objective data that we've been looking at.
Yeah. No, I love that. Because there's a experience in the book you talk about. This certain commander has the authority to like bombard this town. And he was like, well, hold on, like, let's just double, triple check. Let's take that flashlight and really focus. And because of his caution, he realized like, oh, wow, these are a bunch of civilians. It could have went way wrong if he didn't have that ability. Yeah.
That's right. To not take action kind of ballistically without thought and without planful, understanding of the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, what's cool about this too is there's no woo-woo to it. Like that's what I really like about your book. One of the things is just how there's hard data to back up everything that you're talking about. And the other thing too, and you even kind of bring this up in your book, there's not anything like even spiritual about it. It's just hard data. There was like the experience of the general or someone who at first was kind of like looking at meditation like it was Hinduism or Buddhism. He was like associating some type of religious spiritual beliefs with it. And then as he started to look into it, he realized like, oh, wow, this is just like practical stuff.
Yeah. And, thank you for mentioning that because, I want to first say like I honor people's religious spiritual traditions. People should be able to do whatever they want. Yeah. But I'm a brain scientist and I did this work from my expertise as a scientist, really wanting to see fundamentally, could we train attention? And if we did so, could we benefit people's lives? So it's a cognitive training approach that I took. And frankly, I would say I myself, even though I'm an Indian woman and heard about mindfulness and meditation since I was a kid, seeing my parents meditate, I never really thought it was something that could be taken seriously from a scientific perspective. I was kind of a skeptic, like, yeah, that's great for you, but not really what hard-nosed scientists are going to do. I had to overcome my own biases against mindfulness because, frankly, out of all the different things that we had studied in the lab, it was the only thing that reliably, repeatedly benefited attention. And so we can add on, whatever sort of broad cultural, religious, spiritual container supports that for the individual. They should feel free to use that. I'm just saying that when we take it at this level from a brain science perspective, it does seem to be training the brain in a successful and beneficial manner.
Did you enjoy this video? If so, you can listen to full episodes of the Minimalists private podcast available exclusively on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/theminimalists today. Your support keeps our podcast and YouTube channel 100% advertisement free.